Hey guys, what is going on? This is Travis P11. I want to welcome you back to the channel. I'm about to do the Patriot in the Dark blind challenge, okay? The hashtag blind challenge, hashtag Patriot in the Dark challenge. And what it is Patriot in the Dark is a YouTuber. He's a Gun Channels member, and he makes disassembly cleaning videos, firearms videos, and he's completely blind. And so he's issued a challenge out there to anybody that does firearms content on YouTube to make a gun video where you give a detailed description of a firearm or a disassembly video and so on. So what we're going to do live right now in real time, and I'm going to be blindfolded. I'm going to have this eye pillow over my eyes, which actually presses into my eyes, making me completely blind, is take you through a detailed overview of the Glock 17. We're going to disassemble it, clean it, and hopefully put it back together. And we'll talk about what we're doing now. First of all, there is no live ammunition in this firearm, and I will show you this. It does have a snap cap round in it, which is just a dummy round that you use for practice. There's one round in it. If it were a live firearm, you can still go through the steps I'm going to show you, and you would be able to go through the whole procedure. So we'll do the cleaning, and I'll talk about what I'm going to use as we do this. I'm going to be holding stuff up in front of the camera, so it's not going to be my usual perspective or view that you usually get to see in my videos. So you ready? Oh, by the way, my wife Shoshana is going to be moderating comments during this video because I'm not going to be able to see anything that's going on. So if you guys got comments for me during the process or any questions for me, just let me know, and I'll try to go over all the details of the gun and all the the procedures that we're going to be going through and so on. So again, we're going to do this in real time, no outtakes. If I lose something, if something drops or falls, I'm going to have to find it. I'm going to try not to rely on the spouse for any help at all during this video, but I also want to make sure that I can get through this and get it done. It's going to be a completely new process for me. I do feel like I know this firearm front to back. All right, let's do this. Okay, and let's make sure it covers everything. Here we go. This thing's got some crystals in it or something that's supposed to be, I don't know, makes the make your the eye bags go away or something. I don't know how this stuff works, so I cannot see anything. So Shauna here is going to be helping to ensure that I am in focus in the camera, that you guys can see what I'm doing while I'm doing it. Wow. Okay, that's a whole different perspective on things. All right, so the Glock 17, I do have it in my Kydex holster. This is a Bravo concealment holster. About the firearm, we'll talk about the details. First, let's make sure that the firearm is unloaded. So you want to pull it out of your holster. You want to make sure that you keep your finger off the trigger the whole time. Now, when we do this, I'm going to be assuming that you might already have a little bit of experience with the firearm. We know to keep the finger off the trigger. You can feel where the trigger guard is. So the first thing you want to do is press the magazine detach button, which is right here, and the magazine is going to fall out. Okay, now there is a round in the chamber. There's a dummy round in the chamber. So what you want to do is make sure that you do not touch the trigger guard or put anything inside the trigger guard, which is this loop that we have right here, and you want to go ahead and pull back on the slide. Now I'm going to do this at an angle so that my dummy round falls on the towel that's in front of me. Okay, I'm going to put the magazine off to the side here. Okay, now just to verify that the gun is in fact unloaded, as you're feeling around the gun, we'll talk about the features, and then we'll just ensure that it is in fact unloaded. So you've got the top of your slide right here. You've got your front sight and your rear sight. Okay, in the middle, you've got your ejection port for your magazine, for your rounds when they're fired. Okay. Now, on the left side of the firearm, where the slide meets the rough texture of the plastic frame, the smooth slide meets the rough texture of the frame, you have got a button right here that you can feel as you go halfway down, about 2/3 of the way back from the rear. You've got the slide stop button. Okay, it has some straight texture in it, some lines in it. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to grab the top of the firearm and pull back and use your right thumb to push up on this button. It's going to move, and you're going to feel it lock into the slide. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and pull back, push up on the button, and release. Now, if you did it correctly, the slide is going to be locked. If you did not, the slide is going to go back down. So again, you can feel the rise in the button. There's now space where this button is on the left-hand side. Again, I'll go over all the features of the firearm here shortly. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take our finger and we're going to put it down, a pinky, okay, into the inside of the firearm in the slide. And we're going to make sure that there's no rounds inside the chamber. There's nothing in the barrel. You can tell there's nothing in there because we can put our finger down the barrel and we are clear. Now, what you want to do is grasp the firearm, again, keeping your finger out of the loop where the trigger is located, and you want to pull back on the top of the slide so that the slide releases, okay? So now the firearm is in fact unloaded, okay? As much as we can verify, again, you can go back, check the chamber again, make sure that there's nothing down the barrel. If you have any help or any spouses or any assistants, you can ask them at this time to check down the barrel and ensure that there's nothing in the firearm. Just simply grasp, pull back on the slide, let go, and it is now clear. All right, so now the Glock 17, why I think this might be a good firearm for somebody who's visually impaired. Well, for one thing, it's a large gun, and it is easy for you to get a good grasp on it. The features, you can tell a difference in the parts of the critical features of the gun that you would need to correctly operate the firearm. I feel like you can get a good grasp on it so that somebody that might not have strong grasping strength can still work this firearm. My wife actually qualified for a concealed carry permit with the Glock 17, had no trouble operating it, had to do all the work herself while she was at the range. All right, so the most important features, obviously, we have the grip. Okay, you've got the pistol grip, which is what your hand is around. Now, on the top of the slide, if you feel towards the rear, you've got some serrations. This is going to help you get a good grip on the pistol so that you can, in fact, operate the slide to chamber around as well as take the firearm apart. Now, when you stretch your fingers out, depending on the size of your hands, my finger touches this rough little texture towards the middle section of the frame. If you start at the front of the frame and work your way past the rail, you can fill a notch in the rail and work your way past to the rear. You're going to come across the button on the right side and the left side. You're going to fill it with your index finger and your thumb. Okay, this is your takedown lever, takedown button, and so on. We're going to need this for the next step, which is to actually take the firearm apart. Now, we verify that the firearm is in fact unloaded. I believe the capacity on the Glock 17 is 17+1. I may be incorrect about that. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and grasp the firearm, okay, so that you lay the firearm in your right palm, okay, and you're going to feel a curve around the rear of the firearm. You want to wrap your thumb around that curve and wrap your fingers over the top of the firearm. Okay, you might be able to touch your index finger to your thumb if you can. That's fine. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to squeeze. When we squeeze our hand, that's going to pull back the slide of the firearm. Now, in order to take the firearm apart so we can clean it, it's going to be a combination of squeezing and pulling back with your right hand. If you're left-handed, you can do the same. Using your left hand, your thumb, and your index finger, okay, you're going to be pulling down on these little levers up on the front, okay, these takedown levers that I mentioned before. When you release the gun, the slide is going to slide forward just a little bit. You're going to feel that it's no longer going to be flush with the rear. Okay, a little tab right here towards the rear of the firearm. You can feel the slide up against that tab. You're going to start to feel the rail from the rear. You're going to feel some excessive room up in the top. And at that point, we're going to pull the trigger, which is going to cause the slide to slide off the top of the firearm. Now, I'm going to do this at an angle so I don't launch the slide off, so I don't lose anything. You might want to just simply point the firearm towards your working surface or your table, and you're going to pull the trigger, and that's going to cause the slide to come off. So, okay, let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead and grip the firearm, like I said. Wrap your right thumb under the rear of the grip and just squeeze. Now take your left hand and your index finger. You're going to feel those little rough texture buttons. You can only pull them straight down. You're going to pull them straight down, and you're going to pull the trigger, and the slide's going to come off. Now, if you did it correctly, you're going to feel two pieces in your hands. You've got the frame in your right hand, and you've got the slide in your left hand. Go ahead and set the frame off to the side. Okay, put it down on your work surface. At this point, we've got the slide in our hands. Now, there's going to be two main components that you're going to be dealing with this handgun. Okay, you've got the slide, obviously. Okay, that's your first major component. Components 2 and 3 are going to be what's called a captive guide rod and spring, which is this spring surface you can feel. You're going to feel all these little wires, these like constant bumps on your left finger. That's going to be your captive guide rod. It's called the captive guide rod because the spring is enclosed with a rod, which prevents it from shooting off when you disassemble the firearm. That's another thing that makes a firearm like this fantastic for somebody who's visually impaired. Is the captive guide rod and spring is fairly large. It's easy to feel where it's going to go when you reassemble it, and it's not going to launch off when you take the gun apart. So what we want to do is just go ahead and feel the top of the slide, which is upside down in our hands. Okay, you can feel the ridges on the inside of it. You can feel the smooth surface lying in the your left hand. Now we can feel a disc. There's going to be a circular surface, a round surface. That's going to be the rear of the guide rod. What you want to do is go ahead and take your thumb and press it up against the rear of this disc of the guide rod. Okay, go ahead and grab the front of the firearm with your index finger and just squeeze. Now, that guide rod's under very little pressure at all. It's going to just simply come out in your hands. Okay, go ahead and set that guide rod off to the side right next to the frame. And so we're going to go ahead and take this gun apart in the order that we're going to reassemble it. Now, the next major component is your barrel. Your barrel only fits in your slide one way. You can go ahead and you feel these lugs. You're going to feel kind of a rough surface and blocky surfaces as you reach into the top of the slide, and you can grab the barrel and you can remove it. So do that a couple times. Take it out, just remove it from the slide, put it back into the slide, and you're going to feel it lock back into the slide. Now, if that barrel does not move, you know that you've got that barrel properly seated. You can also feel the front of the firearm, and the front of the barrel is going to protrude just a little pinch out of the front of that slide. Now, again, if you could see, it'd be about 1/4 inch, and that's it. So now the next thing we want to do is go ahead and just remove that barrel, and go ahead and put the barrel down, and now we're left with the slide. Okay, so the first step in the cleaning procedure that we want to do is go ahead and put the slide down in front of you. You want to go ahead and just grab your slide. Okay, I'm sorry, your frame. Okay, you have your frame on standby. You want to use any cleaner that you might have. In this case, I'm going to be using some CLP. Now, when you push down the top of this, it is under pressure. Obviously, it's a spray can, so you want to be very careful with it. You're not going to need to press very hard. If you feel the top of the can, you can feel where the hole is. That's where the oil is going to come out when you press on the top of it. You want to make sure that you're pointing it in the proper direction when you go to put some gun cleaner on your patches. Now, your cotton patches can simply be cut up squares of a cotton t-shirt. What I have over here is just some cleaning patches that I'm going to be using for this video. And again, I'm showing this off in the video to walk somebody through the procedure that might not know how to do this. Okay, we're just going to go ahead and take a little small handful of patches out of our hands, and we want to go ahead and just set that off to the side. Again, you want to make sure that you know where all of your components are at every point. You should have 4 critical pieces: your frame, your guide rod, your barrel, and your slide. Now we want to go ahead and just take one of the patches and just put it off to the side, put the patches off to the side. You're going to have one in your hands, your left hand. You're going to have your spray can in the right hand. Again, make sure you know where that nozzle is for the oil, and you're going to press that patch up against the front of the can and just press down a little tiny bit. Okay, you're going to hear that CLP coming out. You don't need a lot when you do this. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and grab our slide and just wipe out the inside of the slide. You can tell because you're going to be going into almost like a box, okay? You want to wipe down every surface that you can feel inside that slide. We don't want to leave it excessively oily, just enough to basically clean it out. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the slide over, and halfway down the slide, okay, it's going to be smooth. There's a hole. It's going to be smooth. You want to take that patch and just gently scrub towards the rear of the center of that slide. And what that's going to do is that's going to clean out your hole where the striker comes out. Now, this part tends to get really dirty, so you want to keep that in mind as you clean out the firearm. Now, the next thing you want to do is taking that same patch, you want to go ahead and take your guide rod spring that I was talking about that's got the disc on the rear and the little plastic piece on the front. Go ahead and take your patch and just go ahead and wipe off your guide rod and your spring. And again, this may not get very dirty. It's pretty easy to clean up at any point. Feel free to grab another patch if you want to, put a little bit of oil on it, and you're going to be all set to go. All right, now, the next thing you want to do is go ahead and take your barrel, which is going to be dirty, especially after a firing session, and you want to go ahead and just simply wipe it off, okay? Wipe off every surface of that barrel. Again, you can really get by with just one patch. Now, any rough, angular surface that you feel is probably going to have some spent powder residue built up on it. And so what you want to do is go ahead and scrub that, wipe that, get in every little nook and cranny that you can feel in the firearm. Now, if you're holding the barrel in your hands and you've got the smooth portion on the top, and on the bottom you can feel the lugs in your hands, the little blocky sections, you're going to feel a little bit of a ramp, kind of a curve, okay? That curve at the rear of the barrel is your feed ramp. You want to make sure you wipe that off. And then also towards the top of the barrel at the rear, you're going to feel some little notches with your right hand. I like to take my fingernail and get in there and kind of scrub a little bit, because you do tend to get a powder buildup as you do that, okay? Now, here's the next part. For this process of cleaning, I'm going to have a 9mm bore snake, okay? So I'm going to be using the bore snake to clean out the barrel. Now, as you feel the bore snake, you've got a weight on one end. You've got a string that's going to lead all the way down to a braided end of fabric. It's basically going to be like a mop. It's going to scrub out your bore. I highly recommend something like this because it's going to make it easier for you to clean out your barrel, and you don't have to worry about putting patches on the end of a cleaning rod and so on. Now, you're going to feel a rough, scratchy surface about halfway down this bore snake, okay? So what you want to do next is go ahead and take your cleaner. Make sure you know where the front of the can is again. You're going to spray a little bit of oil in back, okay, and a little bit of oil in front of those bristles. And what that's going to do is that's going to put some of the cleaner in the grooves of the barrel as you're cleaning it. Now, granted, the Glock's got a twisted barrel, so it doesn't have traditional rifling in it, okay? So what you want to do now is go ahead and grab the weighted end so you feel the weight in your hand, okay, that little metal cylinder, that little end piece here, that's a piece of steel. Go ahead and grab your barrel and put that weight down the barrel. And then what you're going to want to do is go ahead and wrap that string around your left hand and just simply pull, okay? You're going to feel a little bit of resistance, and that's fine. Now, again, you can do this 3-4 times if you want to. Depends on how many rounds you put down the firearm. Now, in my opinion, this is as good as using a traditional cleaning rod with a bristle end on it. Probably not, but it's going to do a really good job of keeping the gun functional, clean, and usable. Shauna, do you have any comments out there at all? Anybody watching?
Frank's just thankful something didn't fly off.
Well, that's why you get a gun with a captive guide rod spring, so you don't have to worry about that. That's the key right there. Okay, so yep, so there we go.
Just in case.
Oh yes, oh yes. Now, once you've run that bore snake through a couple times, you pulled it through a couple times. Go ahead and wipe off that barrel one last time, and we're actually going to go ahead and move on to the frame. Now, what you want to do is take that patch that we've been using, or you can have a few clean patches, whatever you want to do. Make sure you've got some oil on them. And we're going to grab our frame and just go ahead, and the frame is now open from the top. You can feel all these rough surfaces. You can feel all these angles and so on. Go ahead and take your patch, put it in the lower part of the frame, and just go ahead and start scrubbing, okay? Again, you don't really have to worry about hitting anything or messing anything up. Where your rails are, these are going to be some straight bars that you're going to feel coming off the top of the rail. This is the portion where you want to make sure you get a nice little scrub there. Again, the Glock, another nice thing about the Glock, it does not require an excessive amount of lubrication to function properly, so you don't really have to worry about having lots of critical parts oiled. If you just simply wipe off the top and the inside of the frame with a patch that's got a little bit of CLP on it, or some REM oil, or whatever cleaner you like to use, some Ballistol and so on, you're going to have it exactly how you need it. Now, also, when we were cleaning out the inside of that slide, we also, in effect, were putting some lubrication in those little tracks that the rails that the slide is going to ride on every time that you fire the firearm. Okay, now we're at the point where we can go ahead and begin to reassemble the firearm, okay? So what you want to do is go ahead and grab your slide at this point, okay? You want to go ahead and grab your barrel. Now, when you put it back together, okay, this part could be a little bit complicated. All right, so you want to grab the blocky edges of the slide, these little jagged edges that you feel. Okay, there's a smooth edge. It's like a three-sided cube or square, like a little box. You want to go ahead and make sure that that's towards the bottom of the slide. You're going to feel the barrel lock back into place. You're going to hear it. Okay, you hear that noise? Okay. And if you feel, you're going to feel that that barrel is in fact locked back into the slide. It is now done. Okay, so now what you want to do is go ahead and take that captive guide rod that I was telling you about. You've got a sharp disc on one end, and you've got a plastic cap on the other end. You want to make sure that the plastic cap goes on top of the barrel that you just put in the slide, and you want to slide it in towards the front of the firearm. It's going to lock into the lower portion of the slide. Now, what you're going to do is grab the slide with your left hand and squeeze tight, and then push up a little bit and squeeze that guide rod back into the point that it's going to lock into the lug in the inside of the slide on top of the barrel. There's a little tiny ledge that guide rod is going to fit into, and I'm taking it out, putting it back in. So if you squeeze the guide rod and push down, you're going to feel it seat. It's going to lock into place. Now, you're going to know if you have it correctly in the firearm, because if you pinch the rear of the guide rod, you should have an equal amount of space between the inside of the slide and the rear cylinder of that guide rod. Okay, if it is correct. Also, that little cap should be flush with the little circle in the front of your slide. Okay, if it is in fact flush and you can't feel it poking out, you can't feel anything poking in, then you know that you have that guide rod correctly seated. So now the next thing we want to do is go ahead and reassemble the firearm. This part can be a little bit tricky. You basically have a track on the left side and a little track on the right side, some little bars that your slide is going to ride on as you reassemble the firearm. Again, I'm just going to feel and make sure that it feels like my guide rod is correctly inserted into the gun. Okay, just double check here, make sure it's seated. What's that?
Might want to.
Oh, so people can see. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, there we go. Again, I would be doing this on my, just having it sitting on my waist at that point. So what you want to do is go ahead and grab the frame with your right hand, and you're going to take the slide and rest it on top of that frame. And you want to make sure that with your left hand, you can feel your thumb and index finger are putting equal pressure on the top of that slide, and you're going to feel it engage. Okay, it's going to lock into place. You shake that slide and it doesn't come off and it doesn't move. It only wiggles left and right. You know that you have it in the right place. Okay, you're going to go ahead and pull it back and grab the frame firmly with your right hand. Pull back with your left hand a couple times. And you want to make sure that that frame is locking back into place, that it's not skipping off the tracks, that it is in fact locking back into place, and you're good to go. Now at this point, one more time, grab with your right hand the frame, pull back with the top of the slide, and push up with your right thumb that little takedown lever button I was talking about, that slide stop. I'm sorry, not the takedown lever, the slide stop. We're going to lock the slide back open like we did when we first started the video. Put your finger back down into the chamber, make sure that the firearm is unloaded. Okay, now grab the top rear of the slide where those serrations are, where that grippy surface is in on the rear, and go ahead and release the slide and let it move forward. At this point, you can go ahead and dry fire the firearm and make sure that it's going to function. Okay, you can try it again if you want to. Okay, now at this point, I realized when I started this video that I wasn't 100% sure exactly where I put my my firearm. Okay, I'm sorry, my magazine. I did set it in front of me when I first started. My magazine is right here in my hands. I can feel around in it. Shoshana, is this a dummy round? Is this the maroon snap cap round?
Yep, it's maroon.
Okay, this is not a live round, but again, if you were to be reloading your firearm, you'd be dealing with live ammunition at this point. Make sure you know where your holster is, because we want to holster the firearm as soon as we have the firearm chambered with a round in the chamber ready to go. So go ahead and grab the firearm with your right hand, okay? Go ahead and take your magazine with your left hand, and you're going to be, the rear base plate of the firearm is flat. That surface needs to be pointing towards the rear of the firearm. Place it into the pistol grip until it locks into place. It's going to snap into place. If it falls out, you know that you didn't put enough pressure, locking the firearm into the, the magazine into the firearm. Okay, at this point, we're going to go ahead and chamber a dummy round, just a practice round. So we want to grab the slide towards the rear, pull back and let go. And here's how you can tell if this firearm is in fact loaded. Okay, now this is probably something we should have covered earlier, and I apologize for not mentioning this. Towards the top of the ejection port, towards the center of your slide, okay, you have got a little tiny tab. Okay, and this is a little hard to explain, but as you go to the rear of the ejection port, there's a little tab right there. If that tab feels flush or is protruding past the side of the slide, okay, if you can feel that it's flush, you know that you do have, in fact, have a round in the chamber. If you're not 100% sure, you might want to ask somebody to verify it for you. If you don't have that luxury, you can take out the magazine, you can eject the round, you can put your magazine back in and chamber a fresh round, and you're going to be good to go. The one downfall of having the Glock 17 is that you don't have a pop-up chamber indicator to tell you that the firearm is loaded. When you can see, you can actually see the rear of the round sitting in the barrel after you chambered the first round. You can actually see it shining. You can feel that little loaded chamber indicator on the right-hand side, but it's just a tab that's going to be flush with the slide. Okay, if you can run your finger all the way across the rear of that ejection port and you don't feel any bumps down, you don't feel any sharp edges, that firearm is going to be loaded. Now at this point, keeping our finger off the trigger the whole time, okay, you're going to want to take the firearm and you're going to want to put it back into your holster. Again, I'd recommend a Kydex holster. You want to carefully put the barrel back in so that it seats where it needs to be. Okay, keeping your hand out of the front of the barrel, away from the front of the barrel the whole time. Put it back in your holster and your firearm is ready for use. So at this point, we've succeeded in disassembling the Glock 17. We put it back together. This is a definite challenge. I've taken this gun apart and cleaned it enough that I feel comfortable with it. It can be frustrating for somebody who's visually impaired trying to do this the first time. Obviously, you know, if you're watching, listening to this video, I hope I helped you. If not, again, you may want to ask for help in the gun store before you take the firearm home. They'll walk you through the whole steps. You may, if you have a person that's a shooting buddy or shooting friend, they will help you with the whole process too of taking the gun apart, reassembling it, getting comfortable with it, so that you too have a right to defend yourself if you need to. Again, I recommend the Glock 17 because it has features that are easy for somebody who's visually impaired to feel. Again, with the exception of the loaded chamber indicator, which is a pretty big deal. A lot of guns don't have a visual pop-up, you know, or a more predominant, noticeable loaded chamber indicator. You know, other guns do. You might want to check out, consider a different model, but this is one way that you can go. So anyway, guys, that was my contribution to the hashtag blind challenge, hashtag Patriot in the Dark blind challenge, my disassembly and cleaning of the Glock 17 Gen 4. I hope you enjoyed the video. The whole point behind the video is to be as detailed as possible to help somebody who cannot see what they're doing take apart a firearm or give them details on how the firearm operates as if you were talking to somebody over the phone. Otherwise, guys, I think that's pretty much it. Sean, any questions out there at all?
No.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take off my blindfold this time because I think I'm officially done. I'm going to take a look and see what I did, see how my work was. Oh, wow. Ooh, man. Okay, there you go. Thank you. I got my light on over here too. Okay. Now again, I don't have my glasses on anyway, so it probably would have been just as challenging for me too. So, well, I kept everything fairly clean. I didn't get CLP everywhere, so that's a good thing. Again, when you practice with this and you do this enough, it's not an impossible procedure. It just takes practice. So that's all pretty much that it's going to come down to. So Patriot in the Dark, guys, I want you to check out his channel. I'm going to put a link to his channel in this YouTube video as soon as it goes live over on YouTube. This was a Patreon first look exclusive. I want to thank you guys from Patreon for joining me tonight. This video is going to be the link for the video. I hope you can go back and watch it. If you can, I'm going to go ahead and make it go live tomorrow morning. This video is technically unlisted. I don't want to make it live until Sunday morning. So again, if you're on the Patreon side, you click on the link, you may get to go back and watch it. I don't know if you don't have the link. Or if you do have the link and it's not live, I'm not sure what it's going to do. I don't do a lot of unlisted live videos. This is the first one. So guys, this is Travis P11. Thank you guys for joining me. Make sure you head on over to guntube.org where you can watch this video. Head on over to gunchannels.com. And again, that was how you disassemble and clean and reassemble the Glock 17. And Patriot in the Dark, I'd love to hear some feedback from you on this, what you think about it. I do have a tendency to talk fast. I probably should have slowed it down a little bit. But hopefully this helped you out. So anyway, that's it, guys. I want you to have fun. I want you to be safe. Again, be very cautious with your firearms, especially the first time you take it apart, clean it, take it to the range, know the firearm, okay? Get information on the firearm if you're visually impaired before you use it. Read the manual if you are not visually impaired, and that's it. So Patreon patrons, I want to thank you guys for joining me. I don't really have a chance to check the comments here. Anything else for comments? If not, I'm going to go ahead and call it. Are we good?
We're good.
Okay, so
Frank.
All right, there we go. All right, thank you, Frank. Frank the Turk in the house. So that was my wife, Shoshana, who helped me out on this whole process. And that's it, guys. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. All right, bye-bye.